Hello and welcome to the Recruit Rockstars podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Whether you are venture capital backed or private equity backed, heck, maybe you're even bootstrapping the thing. The biggest challenge you probably have is the people part of your business. And if so, you're in the right place. I have tried for a very long time to get today's guest. He's finally agreed to make time. I don't know where he's finding the time, but he's going to give us 20 minutes. And over the next 20 minutes, you are going to learn a ton about how to go from virtually nothing, just an idea, to scaling a company, raising capital, building your team, taking the company public, all in the middle of a pandemic. If that's not impressive enough, I don't know what it is. My guest is Dr. Roy Schoenberg, and he's the president, the CEO, the co-founder of Amwell. Now, it used to be known as American Well, recently changed his name to Amwell, which rolls off the tongue. And he started this company with his brother, and this is now one of the largest, most important telehealth companies in the world. If you're not aware of what's going on in telehealth, telemedicine, you're not paying attention, because especially since March, this thing is up 1,000, 3,000, 5,000% in terms of usage and volume. People are seeing their doctors online, not in the office. And I'm not going to bore you with his bio. It is so impressive. The guy started in Israel, served in the military, scuba diver, Harvard, you name it, and then starts Amwell. And he's kind enough to make 20 minutes for us today. Roy, it's so nice to meet you.
Jeff, thank you. Thank you very, very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Why don't we start at the beginning? You and your brother started the business roughly when?
2006. It sounds like the Stone Age at this point. But
yeah, it's like overnight success story, right?
Oh,
After 14
exactly.
years. There's no doubt that this year with the pandemic led to a breakthrough in volume. But when did you and Ido know that your business had some potential, had some legs, and that telemedicine, telehealth might actually work?
Well, there were a couple of stages, I think, and each one of them was important, because who knew healthcare is so complicated? When we started the American Well, this was, as I mentioned, 2006. This was, just to give everybody a reference, this is before the iPhone was introduced.
Yeah.
So roughly around when electricity was invented. And the notion was, if we can allow Americans to get in front of healthcare providers in a way that is, more intimate, more convenient, and in doing so can potentially avoid acquiring healthcare services from very expensive places like emergency rooms, then maybe we have something in it. So when we rolled it out, the natural customer for us was the health insurance company, who of course pays the bill at the end of each and every one of these transactions.
Yep.
And for a good number of years, it really was the payers that were driving this. And it was the tales of the holy wars, when medical boards were very much opposing, how could you possibly deliver healthcare without putting your hands on the patient and your stethoscope on their chest? But I think the part to me that was kind of the biggest turning point was when one of our today large customer, Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, said, you know what, against all odds, with the understanding of the opposition, we're going to cover it as a benefit, which essentially means that we accept this to be a viable way of delivering effective, efficient healthcare for our membership. And I think at that point, everything started, kind of the domino, started falling, and it became a very real thing.
They must have seen some positive outcomes, cost savings, et cetera.
They did. Everybody was concerned, the physician side, the medical side of things were concerned that this is bad medicine. And the insurance side of things, which is not only the commercial payers, but also Medicare and others, thought that, people are going to completely abuse this thing, because they will come home from work and there will be nothing good on television, and they'll just get in front of doctors all day.
Just to waste time,
yeah, they're going to ask you how you're feeling, how can we help you and everything. That's a nice conversation to have at night. So there were a lot of different kind of ghost stories about what could happen when you start using telehealth. Luckily, none of these actually materialized.
Yeah, but you could understand the fear in people's mind. It was such a new concept, right?
100%.
So let me just give some metrics on this thing, because it's quite staggering to understand the scale for our listeners. 80 million insurance members now have this covered as benefit. There are
Yeah.
more than 50 major healthcare plan partners, United Healthcare, Cigna, some of the Blues, you mentioned that. 2,000 hospitals and healthcare systems like Cleveland Clinic. And there's 40,000 client providers. Now, a provider is a healthcare provider, a doctor, a physician.
Yep.
Got it.
Exactly.
It's just remarkable. I've used it. It's the way of the future. I want to shift gears now. We're going to pivot completely to the people part of the business. So you and your brother start this 15 some odd years ago. It's just the two of you, I assume, in a proverbial garage or basement, cooking up this scheme to take over the medical profession. And now fast forward to 2020, how many employees roughly?
We're nearing 1,000 direct employees, and our networks are, close to 10,000.
Okay. And when you say a network, what would that include?
So there's the technology infrastructure, kind of the software company of things, and then we also run a lot of the clinical services. So we have affiliated clinician networks.
Those are contractors, not employees.
In the practice of medicine in the United States, prevents clinicians from working for software companies.
Right, that's right.
Very deeply affiliated with us. That's the best way to describe it.
I understand. So 1,000 and 10,000, I think you said, right?
Just about, yeah.
Okay, great. So, and these are distributed, or are those 1,000 in one location?
No, they're distributed all over the country. We have offices in Boston, in Virginia, in Los Angeles, in Seattle, in Israel.
Yeah.
But the truth is, things are completely up in the air now because everybody seems to be perfectly fine working from home. So who cares where anybody is?
Yeah. As I was preparing for the discussion, I really wanted to talk to you about the DNA of these 1,000 people and what they have in common. And, the website, to be fair, has the usual, customer comes first, we're one team, be awesome, things that a lot of websites could say. Could you put some color on it? So if I were to poke around some of those offices and meet some of the 1,000 people, what would I notice that they all have in common? What are the unique couple of characteristics that, define an Amwell person?
I think, if I had to sum it up, I would say a sense of purpose, which I'm sure is a word that's being abused, just like one team and deliver awesome and all that, that people aspire for, I think, across any company. But it's rare to be in a position where people always had the aspiration to be of value to the people around us. Everybody is, smart enough to know that there is a good chance that will actually become a reality, that healthcare will develop its ability to happen through technology. But having, being in a position where actually you can actually see that happening,
yeah,
within your lifetime, within your tenure, is not only, it's a self-fulfilling kind of cycle where people are developing capabilities. There is a thirsty market that takes them up, deploys them, and then you can actually literally see on your different dashboards how healthcare is being delivered through us, through our technology. And then it gets to the point that you can actually follow the CDC maps on the pandemic and see hotspots kind of surfacing on our system,
yeah,
literally where you see the epicenter of the virus moving. So with no reasonable doubt that you're essentially making it possible for people to get healthcare. It's incredible.
So the mantra, not the mantra, but the DNA must be a very service-minded person, right? Empathy, help my fellow person, not just in it for the money, I assume.
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting that you put it this way, because, immediately what jumps to mind is all of the, healthcare workers around the country that are really sacrificing so much in order to be, to help other people. And I think that notion of empathy is definitely in there. I think there is, however, another ingredient which has to be there, which is, call it innovation or the ability to push the envelope.
Yeah.
You want to deliver a healthcare experience that is full of empathy and understanding of the reality of different people that need it. But at the same time, you have to say, but I'm not going to take the status quo. I'm going to push, I'm going to stretch the envelope.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it in front of people that they can do things differently, and that will liberate healthcare. And that will allow people to kind of, healthcare will be much more available to people who are, who can't get it. It is these two with a little bit of attention to detail and obsessive compulsiveness that is necessary to develop software or technology, I think that mix is really what's making people run in the corridors, the proverbial now corridors of American Well.
For those of you that are listening and not watching, I am looking at the most obsessive compulsive leader. He's got an Amwell pillow on his bed behind him. So this guy is as committed as they come to the mission of not just the company, but this is a movement. You really think of this as a movement.
I think this is an evolution, revolution, call it whatever it is. I want to make it clear that this is not Amwell's revolution. This is not just us. It's the understanding that is kind of getting now between everybody that's involved in healthcare, that healthcare can be redistributed over technology, which, by the way, every other industry has already done.
Yeah, healthcare was a bit late to the game.
That's an understatement of the century, yes.
Because it's just such a big monster and complex and bureaucratic and so many players. But you're finally, hopefully, on the verge, right?
Everybody has their heart in the right place. I think healthcare, almost by design, needs to be very conservative because you really want to make sure that things are safe and helpful before you kind of experiment with them.
Do no harm, right?
That's right. Prima non nocere, exactly.
Okay, so let's get real here. Let's get vulnerable.
Yeah.
You went from 2 people to 20 to 200 to 1,000. What were some of the most painful, maybe give an example or two, situations as the business scaled, right? It's not all a straight trajectory. On the people part of the business, what kind of mistakes did you find that you made, or challenges that you and your brother didn't anticipate because you had never been part of a rocket ship like this before? It's a once in a lifetime trip. There must have been some real challenges going from 20 to 200 to 1,000.
There's no question. I mean, first of all, it's very hard to pass conviction when you are more and more removed from the people that are newly joining American Well. And some of it has to do, and I would say that that's something that, I would say is the number one challenge over the years, is to adapt the way that you communicate internally to the reality of a dispersed company with a lot of different offices and a lot of different types of contributors. And, obviously it's also, even harder when you have 2 brothers who are running the organization. And even though I think we are, after 30 years of working together, we found a way to really align the way that we're thinking and what we're good at, but it's still different verbiage and, different styles of leadership. I think the part that really helped was the understanding that you have to delegate, which is really hard to do when you are that OCD, young CEO, whatever it is, starting a company.
So how did you learn how to do that? You didn't read it in a book. You didn't have a mentor. You someday just figured out, holy shit, if I don't let go, this thing's not going to work.
I think, it's a mix. I think there's no question that you do trial and error, right? I mean, when you delegate, it's so much about the people that you work with, and their ability to stand up and say, I understand where this thing needs to go. Now I'm going to bring it from point A to point B, and I'm going to do it within the culture that I've created in my organization. Yeah. And you have to trust it. And I want to be very honest, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. But your gut, when you try it a couple of times and someone is able to bring it from point A to point B, elevate them.
Yeah. You build their confidence, their self-esteem. They know they can do it next time.
No question. And you need to give them wings.
So when you think about the times where you tried to delegate, tried to empower, and they bombed, it didn't work, and you realized I got the wrong person, what did you miss? What, if anything, after the fact, did you say, if only I had realized this before I hired them, I would have known that this was not going to work out?
Yeah, I think first of all, when people miss, it doesn't mean that they're in the wrong. There are so many other reasons. You may very well be in the wrong by either not communicating what you're looking for, or not giving them enough time, enough resources, or enough authority to get things done. And I think we're often wrong in those more than we are in the people that we get, because usually we go through a long process of getting people in senior positions in. But I would say that at least at the beginning, it's a joint journey. Delegation isn't top down. Delegation is a bonding that you have with someone that you delegate to, and agreeing on a balance in which you're going to operate together. That puts the onerous work on you just as much as on them. It's not the, the send and forget kind of model.
Yeah.
It's about how you say, let's build this structure where you get the authority to operate, and let's define the path by which we both gain confidence that that works.
How often are we going to check in on this? What are the rules of the road? If you get into trouble, you got to come to me, etc.
And it's a mix of personalities too, by definition. So and it only works if you can get what you want in terms of the feedback that things are going well, checkpoints, milestones, and everything else, but also that the people that run the different organizations feel that they have the authority to pivot if they think that that's right, without having to, approve, debate, delay, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a tango.
So let's say you've done that, and still, you know in your heart you've got the wrong person. How long do you give them before you say, we got to make a change?
My biggest mistake, I think, in this area has been that I've taken too long. And by the way, I think a lot of different folks that run organizations, you tend to cling. There's a sense of comfort of knowing, oh, that's a person that I know for so long, and only if we did things differently next time, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I think that I have stayed too long with some folks. I don't think that there is a recipe that says this is when you have to make a decision. But I think that you have to be mindful of the fact that we tend to seek comfort in the familiar, which gives us a bias, almost inherent bias, to sticking with people longer. And you just need to be aware that that bias exists.
Not to mention people just don't like doing it. Who likes to tell someone you're not delivering and you need to go? It's the worst time of business.
It's not only that. I mean, what follows usually is a very long and painful process, right? When you change a leader inside the organization, if you bring someone from the outside, it's an unknown quantity. You may be getting someone else who has the same kind of issue.
Double you know versus double you don't.
If you elevate from the inside, there's a lot of different people who are good candidates, and you're going to create a little bit of friction around that. So sticking to the leadership group that you have is usually almost something that you try to gravitate to as long and as possible as you can. And I think often enough that can become a mistake.
Yeah,
if you're not mindful to it.
I agree with you 100%. I hear so often from executives, oh, I should have done this 3 months ago, a year ago. And I knew it. One last question, Roy, before we wrap up. As you're assessing a candidate, especially a senior level individual, aside from interviews, have you learned any other techniques or skills or practices that give you a good insight into the person that you're considering for the role?
Yeah, it's that's something that personally helps me. But usually when I interview people for a senior position, I actually ask them, tell me how you hire. Tell me what qualities you're looking in your lieutenants. And usually when you go into how they think about it, what they ask, it's a little bit of a trick, because it's now not about them, it's about how they hire, so they feel more comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
But you can actually see the same qualities surfacing. What's important to them, how they govern, how they manage people, how they delegate, etc. What are they concerned about? What experience they had with potentially bad and good choices in people, that speaks volume to what they consider to be defining qualities that they hold high.
So what would they say that would give you pause and make you say, this is not the right leader?
Well, I think it really depends. When you're hiring people for building technologies, it's different than people who run sales, and different than people that deal with marketing or clinical operations. But I would say the first thing that comes up very quickly are qualities that that either relegate responsibility to other people, that I would think that person should actually have themselves. typically when it comes to software operation, when people say, I want to be the general manager and I don't need to be involved in technology architecture, or I don't need to be involved in technology quality or whatever it is, depending on how they say it, tells you how much removed they want to be from these things. Now, to some degree, that is the appropriate way, because your responsibility is to steer the ship, not to row. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you can't steer the ship effectively if you're too much removed from the understandings of what it is that you're asking people to do and how complex that is. So that's a good, that's kind of a good example of how this tells you so much more about the people that you're hiring than if you ask about them, which a lot of people have either contentions with that, or they have tricks up their sleeve of knowing exactly how to position, because they've done 50 million interviews already.
Sure,
so
of
they
course.
have answers kind of already made for that.
This lets their guard down and they reveal their true self as a leader. And Roy, I think it's brilliant, because your first 20 people are going to hire the next 500.
That's right.
And if you don't get those first leaders right and their ability to hire outstanding people, no matter how good the idea is, you could say, I'm going to change telehealth. If you don't have the right people, it's not going to work.
No question. Our one of the things I'm most proud of is the people that we have. I know that everybody says those kind of things, but we are incredibly lucky. We were thrown into COVID at the time that everybody suddenly had to work from home. Everybody had to have ethics and integrity within their, back of their kitchen table or their attic or whatever it is. It would not have survived. It would not have been possible unless people catapulted them into a point of responsibility on their own.
Yeah. Well, I've met some of the people at Amwell, and they are remarkable, passionate, empathic, just as you described, but none more than you, Roy. And I give you so much credit. I congratulate you on your overnight success of 14 years. You're on the verge of hopefully going public, and you're making a huge contribution during this very difficult time in the world. So congratulations, and thank you so much on behalf of the listeners.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. Always a pleasure.